You're welcome. This meeting will be conducted by audio and video conference without a physically present quorum of the Rock Island City Council due to the disaster declaration issued by Governor Pritzker. Because of this order related to COVID-19 health concerns affecting the state and the city, the mayor has determined that an in-person meeting at City Hall with all participants may not be practical or prudent. Alderpersons and staff may not all be physically present at City Hall due to the disaster, and physical attendance at City Hall may be limited. To participate remotely during the public comment or public hearing portion of the meeting, please join by phone 1-908-777-1309, PIN 874-511-694#.
Thank you. Do a roll call.
Alderman Robinson.
Present.
Hurt.
Here.
Gilbert.
Present.
Swanson. Here. Parker. Poulos.
Present.
Keenan.
Present.
Mayor Tomes.
Here. Thank you. Public comment. Is there anybody, we'll have another one at the other city council, at this regular city council meeting, but public comment for this. Anybody out there? I don't think there's probably anybody virtual either at this point. No public comment? All right. Now, Reverend Ford, we'd love to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, and to the council. I appreciate your time, and also to the staff that helps carry out the commitments of the city. I want to assume the proper protocol and provisions that you have. If it is in protocol here, that I am fully prepared to speak with mask on. If not, I can remove it and add to clarity. I just don't want to offend any.
If it's okay, but you got enough distance here, you can take it off.
Thank you. Well, I deeply appreciate being the executive director, and on behalf of our board of directors and our staff, we appreciate any opportunity to talk to elected officials and staff concerning our commitment, which is to eliminate the causes of poverty and alleviate the negative conditions which poverty causes those that live within it. And tonight I have a presentation. Of course, you're more than welcome to the slides. However, this will not be death by PowerPoint, and I will not be a standing brochure. My sincere commitments is to be able to express in no uncertain terms is the how and why we do what we do. Having been a part of the framework of the city of Rock Island since 1968, and to this very day, location being downtown Rock Island. And then, of course, we have 3 counties of commitment: Rock Island County, Mercer County, and Henry County. But I'm proud to say that we're headquartered right here in the wonderful city of Rock Island. What I want to do is kind of open up with this kind of question, because if you're like me, you have thought about what makes poverty so persisting and why is it so problematic. The truth is that poverty has been around a long time, long before any Johnsonian policy that came up through the Great Society, long before New Deals. As a matter of fact, our faith traditions first responded in ways that they could. All of our faith traditions in some way, matter, or form says how we should treat poor people. And then outside of that, the great commitments of the settlement movement. The West End of Rock Island, of course, has history with that. When individuals, of course, and families from Chicago moved into West End and developed the West End settlement. Now, of course, the moniker on top is still the Belgium Heritage Society, but the Elks and others facilitate that building. And for years, they fought poverty with European immigrants coming in, being impoverished in that side of the community. Ms. Dankman specifically working with local clergy. And after a while of investment, and they got to a point where the West End settlement movement was not any longer needed, and they sought to sell the building and made different decisions. And then, of course, we have the commitments through great policies that have been out, and people thought that we could make change through public policy, and there was great strides. And then, of course, we built out in the nonprofit industry, and poverty still continued to hang around in very unsightly and unwelcome ways. And then there was the great kind of corporate will movement, social responsibility from corporations, which we welcome, but yet poverty still persists. And so we find ourselves thinking about poverty. You know what I believe that makes poverty so persistent and so problematic is that there's no one solution we can throw at it. It takes a myriad of different approaches. And most people, when we say the word poverty, we're thinking about the federal poverty level, because that's the benchmark, right? We say if we could just get people above the federal poverty level, their lives would change and their communities would be developed. And when we talk about the federal poverty level, we're just talking about $12,800 for an individual for a year. And then for a family of four, that's just $26,500. The challenge with that is that if they made $27,000, they're just as poor without the supports. And if they made $13,000, they're just as poor without the supports. So how do we approach this idea of poverty? I know this is something that has been on your mind as policymakers, and you want to do that which is good and just for the good of all. Community Action has a saying that we are committed to serve the best interests of the poor, thereby serving the best interests of all people. So we start with the lowest rung on the ladder, trying to build up and build out. We just don't serve people in poverty. Our intent is to move people up and out of poverty. We're not a social service agency, although we provide services. We're built on the model of relationship. We're built on the model of bringing people together and organizing people to take care of responsibilities that all of us have a need and should have an understanding and hope to move people out of poverty. So the federal poverty level tells us something, but it never tells us enough. It tells us essentially where they are, but it doesn't tell us how deep they are or the depth of poverty that that family is in. Are they closer to the bottom of the well, or they're closer to the top? Because the strategies we employ to make their lives better are not the same. It doesn't tell us enough. It tells us something. Does it tell us about the duration that family has been in poverty? And the truth is that if a family has just been aligned to poverty, it's quite different than being 3 generations in poverty. And the solutions that we present are different at times. And then it doesn't tell us enough about their situatedness. It's a phrase that I picked up from a sociologist some years ago, John Powell, that talks about how a person is situated, their families. It doesn't tell us that if a family member is addicted to meth, that this is why the income is being eaten up. It doesn't tell us if they're located by waste sites, that the children have asthma and need additional help with their physicalities. It doesn't tell us if they are near schools that are underperforming. It doesn't tell us enough. The federal poverty level tells us a story, but not the complete story. So how do we think about the poverty level? Well, we have a few ways that we approach this work. First of all, I would like you to know who it is that we serve. We serve the generationally poor. And the generationally poor are individuals that are James Baldwin described as being in the dim-lit cell of the American dream. These are individuals that most people would say, why can't they just do better, and why can't they see more for themselves? But if they're living in the basement of the American dream, their heads hang low, not because they're simply depressed, it's because the ceiling is just over their brow. It's that they watch the rest of society through a porthole reality and watch their footsteps as they walk in a pedestrian way to get to their goals, and they feel trapped underneath the surface. Maybe they hear the celebration on the floor above them, and they can hear everyone dancing as they celebrate graduations and employability and opportunity and ownership. The truth is that they are individuals that they see less because they look out of a porthole. Our job is to get them to the balcony, because you can always see more when you're standing on the rooftop than you can from the basement. It gives people a different perspective. They see their lives better. They see their children's life differently. They see their expectation and hopes and dreams in a different way. So we serve the generationally poor. But we also serve those that are episodic poor. Those who are doing fairly well, maybe couldn't take the year vacation and spend a week out of town in some resort, but they could probably get to Adventureland or Great America and spend a hotel night somewhere and have a family dinner. But one bad mistake, one challenge from society, one issue from the environment that changes how they live their life throws everything in flux. You know, right before COVID happened to us all, that most Americans didn't have enough for a $600 emergency, over 50%. That before COVID, 40% of Americans did not have what they call a basic survival budget to take care of their basic needs of housing, transportation, food, and the utility thereof. That's before COVID. So you can imagine what people are going through now. You know, the two biggest areas that we see that we are serving that are episodic outside of the pandemic is one, from separation from a partner. An individual decides that they are no longer going to contribute to the household, whether married or live-in or cohabitation, whatever one wants to describe it. When that person separates, it puts at very disparaging realities children and women. When we do the demographic shakedown of numbers, it is women and children that are most vulnerable to poverty. Poverty is genderized and it's age-specific. To the bookends of life, the very old and the very young are most susceptible to it. Episodic, the other episode that drives people into poverty is a health crisis. Most of America has health provision through employment. What happens to a person when they're severed from their employment? They want health care. And we can debate and have dialogues about how we should provide and accessibility to health care. But what is not debatable is the fact that people, when separated from employment, don't have much other recourse to take care of their physical needs. They start jumping into emergency vehicles to do the most basic response to their health needs. They have bills that they won't be able to pay, and all of us will have to contribute to take care of the bill that is left on the books. So this episodic reality, I would tell you, you are safe individuals. This is a safe place. I'm a member of clergy, and so confession is good to the soul, for the soul. That I would do this day in and day out. I have people that I love. Some of them are fighting cancer. But if I thought they would keep my loved one here another year, another holiday, I would allow every bill that I have to go backward in debt attainment. Mm-hmm. I would allow them to drag my car out of the driveway and repossess it. I would allow them to come and put a sticker on my front door and say foreclosed. And there are far too many Americans, far too many citizens that have those situations concerning health realities that drive them into the pit of poverty. And so we're here to find resources and partner as many ways that we can to challenge that. The final group we serve is the working poor. Now, I'm like you. I said to myself, when you put those two words together, they should never go together. Actually, it's oxymoronic. Two words that should never go together in this great land of America, working and poor. But I would have you to know, in case you do not, there are people that work 40, 50, 60 hours a week that still have to come to Project Now. So when individuals say they need to work harder, they're working overtime beside the time, in between the time, trying to find a little bit more time to work more. It's not possible. They don't earn enough. They have too many commitments at times to stop everything and go back to school, but they're giving it their best shot. So how do we find solutions for the working poor, people that are doing what society needs for them to do, work and contribute to the good of the whole, and still they don't make enough? The challenge that we have is ever before us. And so the way that we confront this is no single silver bullet. We throw everything that we possibly can at it. And the truth is that we're at a point that we're working through 5 systems. And the 5 systems that we believe that we can rally everyone around, we have this phrase in community action that says maximum feasible participation. Individuals, institutions, organizations, faith community, organizers, corporate America, public policy, everybody that is capable for stepping into the environment with us and helping us turn this right side up. We welcome your input and your partnership. But we have 5 systems that we work through. The first is health, and then, of course, we work through the housing reality, and I'll go through some of these at length with you. We work through the economic reality, education, and justice. And all of our programs fall within those 5 categories to be able to move people up and out. Some of you know about our commitment to education through Head Start. We have 330 children with us. That's our commitment. That's our slots. 330 throughout the 3-county commitment. Rock Island, the city of Rock Island, the school district of Rock Island has their own Head Start. We're a partner with them. So we provide Head Start everywhere in the county of Rock Island, save the city of Rock Island that's under the school district. But these children are, of course, of low-income families. What makes us different than probably other daycare providers or maybe even other systems of education is that you will not hear from our team members that we're not social workers. In fact, Head Start was instituted with the idea and understanding that we would welcome not only the children, but the entire family. So we build out all of the services that we provide as an agency. We wrap them around the entire family. Our goal is to make sure we're providing the supports, the education supports, the help and assistance. And you can look throughout the network of Head Start and find people that started actually as a parent. Now they're overseeing Head Start programs in the state of Illinois. You'll find people that started out as a Head Start parent. Now they are helping us make the policies on our policy council. You'll find people that started out with very little, and now they're able to take care of their families and so much more. How do I know? I'm a Head Start alum. Head Start changes the world and gives opportunity for those that need supports early in life. Our commitment is to take care of their vision, take care of their medical and dental while they're with us, so all of them have providers by the time they leave, from 3 to 5 years old. That's our commitment, to build these supports so they can compete, and that their socioeconomic status of their family does not restrict them from living out the American dream and having opportunity along with their counterparts that happen to have more resources. And so we provide additional education supports for adults. We do CNA training. We are able to pay for it. We can work and make sure they get a chance to pay for their CDL, their commercial driver's license. We pay the bill for that. If they want to become a phlebotomist, we take care of the bill for that. If they have another dream and maybe in catering and they need some type of training through one of the local community colleges, we take care of that. And so we are committed to education. Education is still the great escalator toward opportunity in this land. Community services, many of you have already come to know, maybe your citizenry have contacted you about our commitment with community services. Our big commitment right now is LIHEAP, the Low Income Housing Energy Assistance Program that many of you know about. We're pushing numbers right now. We have about 2,200 since July that we've served so far, and that number continues to grow. We estimate we'll be around 9,000 to 10,000 this year, and we'll detail the numbers, and I don't mind coming back to the council to tell you the investment. But alongside of that, we have rental and mortgage assistance, what I'll talk about at length. But our community services takes care of water bills as well. We have a new water program. We're able to take care of energy bills. We're able to take care of transportation as well. Light transportation, maybe if they need brakes on all 4 tires, we're able to replace them if it keeps them from going to work. We're able to do different things with this money. It's flexible to keep people moving forward in their lives and their goal attainment. This great hope with this service allows me to be able to stand before you and tell you in the last fiscal year, we've invested in the city of Rock Island alone over $1.3 million back into the lives and the housing and the utility assistance for this city. And that gives me joy to be able to say that we're helping to secure the citizenry from being destabilized because of a crisis economically. And then, of course, I want to talk to you a little bit about our housing. We have weatherization, we have housing, and our property and asset division. For those that don't know, we own 102 properties that throughout the 3 counties, we provide low-income housing that is affordable. And what do I mean by affordable? That's less than 1/3 of their income that we offer. Somewhere in the 300s is our lowest, and mid to high range 500s for a single family home of at least 3 bedrooms that we're able to provide the public. We take joy in saying that we allow people to come in and to build their resources so they can think about their next step. We have the continuum of care where we supply support for housing for 15 counties on both sides of the river. We are the fiscal agent of that commitment. The pass-through is directly from HUD. We're proud of that effort as well. We can actually take care of a person that is sleeping on the streets through our homeless prevention program. We drive around knowing where the pockets are and where they sleep at night. We go and do their checks. When they're ready, we're able to move them from that curve all the way through to housing that is transitional, then permanent housing, and then if they continue to grow in the housing continuum, we can work with them to secure their down payment after going through a set of classes to get their first home. So this is what our commitments are. We have the continuum of housing from homelessness all the way to home ownership. The weatherization program allows us to be able to come in and secure homes that are wind whipped in the winter, like the weather we had last night that can blow underneath the doors and through cracks and single pane windows that keep people in blankets because they cannot keep the family warm enough through the heating system that they have. And we're just now beginning to touch the point of getting close to the freezing mark, let alone when it becomes negative 15 and negative 30 degrees with wind chill that is approaching us in the near future. We're able to come in and insulate that home, secure its windows and its doors, and make sure those families can exist. I'm sad to tell you that I've been in homes in this area, that I can look out of cracks through the door, and that I can see through the roof in some of the locations where residents have stuffed things in the cracks to keep wind or rain, and sometimes even varmints from climbing into the home. This is a sad reality. There are people that are house poor. They have a home, but that home is literally falling down around them. And so we work with weatherization. We can also build out. We can build ramps. We can come in and redesign a living space that now a person has become other able. They have a disability that has been recognized. Maybe they have a walker, they have canes, they have a wheelchair, and they need accessibility. We're able to come in and help redesign and find support to redesign restrooms and bathrooms for them so that they can take care of the necessities of life itself. Our goal is to make sure that low-income people have what they need at that time in their life. So housing is a big addition to that work. Senior services, we serve about 4,000 seniors, and I'm glad to say again, our senior headquarter location is in Rock Island. So we have our headquarter building there. We provide transportation. We have the Rock Island and Mercer County commitment, so we provide rural transportation to doctor's visits, to employment, take care of family responsibilities, and so it's at low to no cost to low cost, depending on the responsibility that we have. We are able to take care of those families. We serve congregate meals. We have congregate meal sites throughout. Of course, COVID has hindered a lot of that, but we're finding new ways to do our responsibilities and carry out. We have home-delivered meals, and with no waiting list, everyone gets a hot meal delivered at least one time a day from us. We also can deliver meals that are self-storage so that they can have them over a period of time as well. We're doing our best with our INA, Information and Assistance case management team, to call them and check on them. Our seasoned adults are very important to me. They have reached the age in life that they should have fellowship, care, and concern. They should have opportunity. Outside of COVID, when COVID isn't here, they have their own groups. They have their own agenda. They have their own policy making. They make decisions. They think about how they want to spend their time with us, and I'm proud to be able to offer services to our seasoned adults. So how do we move forward? We're going to move forward through a level of innovation and initiatives that allow us to make impact. The truth is that our hands are full. When COVID happened, I entered into our building in March of last year of 2020 with 6 staff to serve 3 counties. We worked over the next 6 weeks to bring all of our team back. We built out our budget. We were only 7% remote ready, and we took care of our technology needs, but that wasn't going to be enough. We created a service window so people could still walk up and still talk to us face to face and passed in their documents and to learn from us how to take a next step rather than being at home isolated. And when that weather turned inclement, we knocked down every wall we had in what we now call the legacy room and created a great room. So in a space like this large space that we have, we created a space so that we could social distance and still take in through a mobile office reality and keep them at distance and allow them to walk up to a station rather than close down and make everyone go through a telecommitment that was going to be overloaded and overburdened. So we have our hands full. One of the things that we're doing right now, because of the challenges with COVID, is the eviction diversion program. We're working with the Rock Island County Bar Association, the 14th Judicial Court Circuit with Judge Pintuick. We're working with Perry State Legal Services as well. We have a commitment from the Rock Island Bar Association and John Deere Lawyers that provide mediation services. We also work with the Salvation Army to put this commitment together. We've been organizing through this effort for over a year, and when the eviction moratorium was finally lifted, we were the only other county outside of Cook County to be on the ground, 10 toes down and ready to go. And so this county, and headquartered right here in the city of Rock Island, we've been facilitating the eviction diversion program. That means we stay out of the courts. And all the property owner has to do is be willing to partner with the tenant. The tenant has to be willing to partner with the property owner. We sit at the table moving funds. I had at the beginning of the year $2.5 million to invest. And we started out making those investments last February. We started making those investments day by day, and now we're at about 552 households, 1,309 individuals that those households represent, and we have invested $1,065,709. Over $1 million invested. I have $1.4 million to go. I would have been able to move much faster, but the eviction moratorium prevented me from investing the dollars because the moratorium in place was not a last resort and the funding had restrictions. As long as that moratorium was in place, I couldn't move the money. I believe the moratorium was in right standing and good to do. And so to the commitment of the governor and his team, I appreciate it. However, now my runway is short, so I'm asking that if the council could communicate this to your constituents, if they ask us or ask you, how can I get help, please send them to us. At the very least, I can supply 3 months of back rent. At the very most, I can supply 12 months of back rent. 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months is the funding that I have to be able to throw at this and to make sure that those property owners have what they need to stay in business. The latest study suggests that the Quad City region has somewhere around 6,500 units short of affordable housing. And I'd just like to tell you as well that around 19,000, close to almost 20,000 individuals rent in Rock Island County. 40% of that population are what they call cost-burden renters. Cost-burden renters. That means over 30% of their income goes to rent. The truth is that we're finding people pay 50, 60, 70% of their income goes to rent, and their livelihood is not sustainable. And people would ask, well, why would they do that? There's a whole lot of reasons, and I would love to tell you, and I don't have time to unpack it all, but I'll tell you sometimes the rent that they have is the last resort, and they couldn't find anywhere else to deal with their credit score that would allow them to get in. So there are reasons why people pay more for less. So we're working with these initiatives. And then there's the Fully Free campaign that we're working on. Fully Free is a commitment to help returning citizens, men and women returning from prison, to be able to come back to society, reintegrate back into community, but also into their homes and to employability and housing. The challenge is that currently there's 1,189 laws on the books of the state of Illinois that impact 3.3 million people that since 1979 that either have a conviction of a felony or an arrest record that prevent them from housing and economic opportunities that will allow them to move themselves and their families upward. Over 982 of those laws prevent them from employability. So what we're doing is asking the hard questions and how can we partner with city governments and school districts, places of business. We're asking them to consider what laws do they have and provisions do they have to hire and consider people that have a conviction status of a felony. You know, it's not that hard to get a felony in the state of Illinois. If a person makes a bad decision in their young years and steals an iPhone, it's a felony, and it stays with them like a bad stain for the rest of their life. And who would want to be held to a permanent punishment for a decision that most of us would consider was the poorest and worst decision of our life? My commitment is a moral commitment, but maybe you enter into it monetarily, or the cost benefits of allowing people to come back into society. We ask them to be able to contribute. We ask them to get a job. Their parole officer works with them every day. They have to check in and tell where they are and what they're doing to get employed. It's a cruel act to tell a person to get employed and be a positive, productive citizen when they don't have constitutional rights to help them be able to maintain the responsibilities of citizenry. And so I'm asking, can we partner on this, and what can we do? Many city governments, they can't fill a ditch, even though they're coming to do it as work release programs. But when they get out, they can't even apply to those same institutions that utilize them as volunteers. We're not asking where there is a conflict of interest or where there may be a challenge with the reason why they were incarcerated. If there was assault, we're not saying that they should work with children or anything like that. But surely there are ways that we can do better. If a person, this is what I know, if a person cannot become part of the tax base, they undoubtedly will become part of the tax burden. This is our responsibility. And then, of course, we're working with commitments that allows us to do honor homes. Our honor homes, we have 6 properties. 4 of them are in the great city of Rock Island. Honor homes, just like the honor flights. I'm a 3rd-generation combat veteran. I appreciate all the service that our servicemen and women have provided, and we're looking for ways to provide housing for them. Our goal is to be able to have them come in, low income, rent that is affordable, and then do a build out to a turnkey operation that allows them to become taxpaying citizens of the city of Rock Island. That's our goal. I have 4 properties I'm working. I need some additional support dollars. We've been working at it over a period of time. These honor homes are going to be able to honor those families and give them a chance after serving this nation in the way that they have. Those are our commitments. They're many, they're vast, and again, we do a lot of things. We just don't do it all. We do as much as we can for as many as we can, as long as we can. And the truth is that some years ago, I had a chance to do one of these excursions where they take individuals to do team building. Maybe you've done it as a city, and you go out to a rope course or something like that. And coming out of the Marine Corps, I had seen enough rope courses and done enough missions and drunk enough seawater. But this was part of a team building, and I suited up and booted up for it. They had the rope course where you get underneath it and you climb up at a diagonal launch. And the goal was that those of us that were underneath would have a net, and the net would be relaxed. And we would watch them climb. They were doing the climbing, we were holding the net. And at some point in the journey, they may have been maybe discouraged at how slow it was taking. Maybe their hands would get weak. And the instructor would always tell us, your responsibility, if you can't stay on that rope, is to say one thing, and that one thing is falling and screaming out as loud as you can. And our responsibility for those of us who held the net was a simple responsibility. When you hear the word falling, that you would take the net, take it and grip it with tension and pull it to keep people from falling and injuring themselves. And if it had to be their lot, if the wind blew or they got discouraged in the journey, they cried out falling. And you know what we did? We didn't yell at them and said, you should do better. We didn't make a judgment about their character, because poverty in America means that you're deficient of character, that there's something that you're lacking. It is never a systems problem. It's never an issue of how we integrate or incorporate people back into the fold. It's always just personal responsibility, never public policy and never public will. But it takes all 3. I've been doing this for 25 years, and it's always all 3. Personal responsibility, great public policy, and a public will to make change. Our responsibility was to stretch that net. I'm asking for additional partners wherever I can. I'm not asking you to do what I do. I'm just asking, would you take a portion of the net that's yours and stretch it with everything you got? My goal is to get as many people out of poverty in the city of Rock Island as possible, then come back and stand before you flat-footed and say, this year we were able to move this amount of families into security. And now we believe that they can go on and help change the reality of Rock Island for the good. Thank you for your time. I appreciate what you do for so many and how you've already in the past stretched the net. I'm asking, would you help me do it one more time? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions or comments? Doesn't look like it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed it. I apologize.
Thank you, Reverend Ford. I know several years ago, I was able to take advantage of working with one of your senior advocates who helped my husband with a Medicare Part D problem that we could not manage on our own, and your senior advocate got it done.
Oh, thank you. I'll pass that on. Thank you so much.
Yes, we greatly appreciated having that resource. Meant everything to us. Could you tell us more about what your future housing plans are?
Our goal is that we have always, over the last 20 years, been involved in housing. We have 4 multiplexes. When I say multiplexes, that are partnerships. They're separate LLCs that are through IDA and with the state of Illinois. But even more so than that, we've been taking a strategic look at affordable rental properties. We know that the inventory, and that's why this eviction moratorium program is so important, because if those small businesses that are property owners can no longer offer that property because they are over their head in back debt because the tenant hasn't been able to pay, then that takes it off for the register, and then we have a growing homeless problem. And small businesses are the economy of every opportunity, of every community, and home ownership or housing shelter is essentially the anchor to all other opportunities. People cannot think about education without secure shelter. People can't think about employability that's long-term without secure shelter. Everything is at risk until we can get their feet under them. Our goal is to take a look at the inventory stock that we have. We have 10 commercial properties. Some of it is downtown. We're working with Jack Cullen and others to have a conversation with. We've entered into the beginning stages. It has to be flushed out over a period of time, but our goal is to see what we can do, and I do not mind coming back at invitation or by solicitation to come back and be able to report. Our housing committee on our board now is doing the inventory and asset review of all of our housing stock, and we're looking for partnerships of where there may be opportunity to do new development. I've talked to city staff in the past about pocket housing, pocket communities as well, something that may be of interest, bigger than the small homes, may be more appealing for small families and individuals. And so we're interested in what we can do in the realm of housing, because I know if we can get more housing units available and make them affordable, that we have a good chance of building the citizenry. Thank you for your question, and thank you for your service.
Thank you for all you do.
Do you have any specific ideas or asks, I guess, for the city? I'm more than happy to give you a thumbs up, broadly speaking, from my perspective. And perhaps right now is not necessarily the place and time to get into the
Sure.
details, but I guess where do we, how do you envision, where do we go from here if we want to work, if we want to pull the net, as you say?
Thank you. What we're working on is essentially, over the past year, I went on a fever pace of talking to as many organized groups and individuals to try to build up the awareness about poverty, because poverty can be, although when we see it in the winter, when people are homeless, and then sometimes we see long lines outside of food pantries and things of that matter, it comes to bear, but it's really an invisible reality. There are people that may work alongside of you that sleep in their car. And sometimes people say, you know, poverty is this mindset. No, poverty is a real thing. It's not a mindset, because when your children don't have enough to eat, it's a real thing when their stomachs are not inflated because they've eaten too much of the cake and pie, but their stomachs are growing closer to their backbones, and children moan at night. And the parent is trying to figure out, what can I do to put a little something in their stomach, and I don't have anything. It's a very real thing when you, with TANF and SNAP, the benefits, you can't purchase diapers with that. I got two small children, 6 and 4, and both of them were in Pampers at the same time at one stage. I can tell you, it eats up a budget. There are horror stories where social workers saw parents scoop out solids out of diapers and pat it down and put it back on the child. They fear not having diapers. I think awareness is the first thing. Second of all is to build some public will of what we can do together. Housing, education, employability, justice. The Returning Citizen Project of Fully Free is a justice issue for me and for the agency. I think that what we can do is take a look at where the overlaps are natural and where there is some need that maybe the city has been querying, questioning about, and maybe Project Now with its institution and its legacy and its volunteers and its supporters could come in and be in discussion and dialogue. We'll throw it all on the wall. We'll poke at it, pick at it, try to pull it off, and if it stays up there, then we should do it together. But I appreciate the spirit in which the question was rendered. But housing is the first thing that I know that I would need help on. And then, of course, building out the possibilities of figuring out how do we secure economic development and training that is not being provided currently. Most of the people that work in fast food now are not teenagers. Teenagers only make up 30%, and I used to work at Ponderosa at the end of Rock Island here. I bought my first car on tips, a wood grain Dodge Omni, 1978. Where do kids get their first employment experience now? 16, 17, 18 to help out families. Because the job that children used to have is occupied by an adult that's trying to support their family, and they're holding on to that job. So I would love to think through it with you and figure out what we can do. I know there's funding that the city gets and has leverage with. And then there is the opportunity of our CSBG dollars that we can partner with CSBG and CDBG and figure out what we can do together.
And I'll take it a step further. I've printed and handed both you and Mary the enterprise study. That's a great place to start of where we could partner. Everything you're talking about are lifted up as strategies within that document. I think that's a great place to start.
Thank you, and we appreciate the resource. I'll make sure we digest it very quickly and be able to share the facts as well with the public.
Very good.
Thank you
Thank you.
again. I appreciate your time and what you do for so many Rock Island citizens.
Well, thank you for what you do, and your organization. It's wonderful. All right. Next up, we have Denise with F3 and Mike Bartels, Public Works.
How much did we spend on all these new heaters for tonight? They went out of True Valley and bought like 5 of these. Isn't that a great way of saving money?
Let's just turn the furnace off every Monday night and do that.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for allowing us to present tonight. Just a real quick introduction. I have Denise Browning, who is the current F3 manager. She oversees Sunset Marina currently and has since October of 2018. And with her tonight is Matt Bauer, who is the Director of Marina Operations. And he has joined us tonight for our presentation as well. I'm not going to take too much time. Before I turn it over to Denise, obviously tonight we're going to be going over the current state of the marina, kind of how we've got here. I know the city manager emailed out, I believe, a timeline of some previous history, and this does mirror a lot of that same information. That timeline went back, I believe, from 2014, 15, 16, and 18. And really hasn't changed to where we are at today with the same needs. And so we really want to be stress. We do need direction on how we move forward with the marina, and it is in a critical time on where we go with the future of it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Denise, and if you have any questions, we'd love to answer them after the presentation.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. As you guys know, from the lengthy presentation I sent out to all of you, I hope you had a chance to review it. It's pretty lengthy. I'm going to try and go through it much faster than trying to dwell on every slide, because I hope you had time to really look at it. So to reiterate what Mike said, we're here tonight to inform you of the current status of the marina. And after this presentation, the City Council will be asked to direct F3 Marina and the City of Rock Island Public Works Department in regards to the future of the marina. Over the past several years that I've been at the harbor, when I took over, there were 211 slips occupied at the harbor. Currently, we are at 251 slips. That's also not including all of like monthly slips and transient slips and other opportunities that we take for more revenue. I like to tell our boaters, they'll say, oh, can I sign up for winter storage? Of course, I want all of your money. I want your fuel money. I want your slip rental. I want your winter rental. I want your marina services. So these numbers are really a good indication that the harbor with a full-time staff has really helped us increase occupancy, satisfaction, and also getting ice sold, fuel sold. And those aren't really big money makers at the end of the day, but they do provide huge resources to our boaters that make them tell their friends. And we actually have several that have said, you bought a boat, you have to come to Sunset. So we are excited that we hear that feedback from our boaters. The future projects that really need to be addressed that we're going to ask for direction on is, first and foremost, dredging. Without dredging, we really won't be able to operate the harbor. It is silting in quickly, and the longer it waits, the harder it is getting to be out. We'll kind of go through a couple of the pictures, which just kind of, again, just show you how much siltation has happened. I know several of you have come down and seen me. Some of you have been out on the dock, some of you have been out on the boat, to really try to take in what's happening, and I do appreciate it. We have docks that are beyond aging, you know, dock age out direction on if we're going to do it. Again, the number one priority would be dredging. Without dredging, the grants are kind of pointless, and it would be a waste of the city's money to not, you know, to really kind of say, we're really not taking this grant because, you know, we have several hundreds of thousands of dollars the city would have to come up with. And that's a reality that I think F3 Marina and Mike Bartels know that we want to share with you guys, because we don't want to waste taxpayers' money on things that would not really move us forward. So I want to make sure we do have that dredging in there. In addition, you know, we have upkeep and things that have happened. One of the concerns our boaters have is the river entrance lighting is out. That is covered in the FEMA grant. The power pole fell on the island, and until we have that money, the office roof leaks. Times the ceiling tiles collapse. We're trying to take care of those. We kind of leave them as long as we can because we don't want to waste money again, but it is a huge thing, and we'll kind of look at that. And then the parking lot, there's places that are failing that with our travel lift we can't drive, or we have to be very careful about how we drive so we don't sink the lift with a boat on it. In February, some of you were here, we talked about dredging. We did a study with the Corps of Engineers on how much siltation has happened directly impacting the harbor, not the entire lake, not the entrance to the harbor, which also needs attention, but just this entire part where the docks sit. And we're looking at almost 200,000 cubic yards that need to be dredged. I wanted to reshare this item so that you guys could be fresh on that.
200,000
Cubic yards.
That's a lot.
So with that, it's a lot of silt to remove. It's not something we can just put in our dredge pit. Our dredge pit holds about 25,000 cubic yards. So a lot of it would have to be taken off site. As you're dredging, it creates cavities and then it kind of fills back in. So we truly believe with this much silt that needs to come out that a dredge plan needs to be created and executed. The plan of this magnitude would cost about $30,000 from what we're finding when we're just doing some conversations with companies trying to figure out how to make this plan happen. That we would also ask them to put together, after we get it to the point that we should be below flat pool, that we would also have more of an annual, what does that look like to keep the harbor open so that you're not looking at 200,000 cubic yards of siltation. With the total dredge and siltation removal, we didn't go crazy, but we just got a rough estimate. We're looking at about $5.8 million in dredging, which, you know, is a lot to stomach in my opinion. But that is something with a dredge plan. You wouldn't have to do that all at one time. That is taking a lot of the siltation off property and getting it removed properly. This is kind of one of the parts that I really want to just skim through so that we don't waste too much time, and then you guys can have some time for questions. As you can see here, this is our 100 dock, and it's a little blurry, but probably on your computers you could zoom in a little more and see like the tubs are sticking out of the water when we're about 4.5 feet on the hydrological chart. The one on the right is both 100 and 200, and you can see the back side of, and this is a little easier to see, you can see all the flotation on 200 when we're at 4.5 feet is sitting out of the water and on dry land. We can't put a boat there, so that dock all season has been unusable, even for our little pontoon boats, because you just can't put a boat in there. 300 dock has a lot of siltation. With the docking system, it is. Our boats kind of closer to shore are sitting in the silt. I actually have boats right now that we're hoping that we had enough rain yesterday, that they're floating, that we'll be able to pull tomorrow and Wednesday before the water goes back down. The boat on the left was sitting out of the water by 6 inches, so you can't even give that a tug to get it out. The other guy had about 6 inches, and he's almost at the complete end of 300 dock. The 500 dock, again, you know, you have your finger piers, which are the piers that go out next to the boat, sticking up out of the water, which can become hazardous. We still have boats tied to those. We're still running slips. We didn't close. But those things are now starting to break. The infrastructure underneath the water is really damaged. We don't really know how much damage has occurred this season, because when the water comes up, that's really when it's going to be most evident. This is some pictures of 600 dock, which is our littler boats, smaller boats. As you can see, the end of the dock is higher than the boat because it's sticking up out of the water by the dock structure. The one on the right with the blue, you can see it's kind of cracked, so the dock is broke a little bit. So we're also trying to figure out how much of that is going to happen once the water comes back up. These are kind of pictures of 7 through 900. The floats, if you go right now, well, now that the water's come up a lot today, but if you would have went Saturday, you would have really seen all the flotations up out of the water, not even holding the dock up anymore. As you can see, this one is also kind of the same as the previous slide where you're just seeing it popped out. We're worried about them breaking. And then, you know, we have a great team at Sunset Marina, and my Marina Yard team is actually led by Chad Mate, who's been with the city for, I'm going to say, close to 20 years. And because we have him, he's been helping with the F3 Marina team to build supports, rebuild, you know, put in new boards, try to really keep Band-Aiding things together. We've welded docks back together that have broken, but we're just getting to the point where the Band-Aids on top of the Band-Aids aren't going to be able to be Band-Aided any longer. One of our nicest docks is Dock 100 with the low water. You can see on the left, that's actually a spud pole, and the docks slide up and down on those spud poles so that we have docks floating at 4 feet and we have docks floating at 25 feet. The water got so shallow this year that it actually made that crease in the roof support of the 100 dock, which was disappointing because that dock is one of our favorites, and there's a couple of those on 100 dock that have it. My first winter here was exciting. We had a lot of really cold and really snowy weather, and we had bubbled in boats that year. We had let people water store, and you can see because the docks were not supported by the ice, they were sinking and then freezing because it was negative 55 wind chill over. And you can see in that picture where it was really bending up the structure. So we no longer do water storage except for one steel hull boat that freezes in with the docks so that it's safe. The 200 dock, we don't have power. That is because of the flooding in 2019. That pedestal's about ready to collapse. It is part of the FEMA grant information. So at this point, our 200 dock, when it can float, we use for the little boats that are non-powered. So we're also going to be looking for direction on that grant, and this is one of the big reasons why. The 300 dock, again, is one of the better docks, but our roof structure has taken a beating over the last several years, one with snow and ice in the winter, and then when we have big windstorms like Duratio, we didn't see a lot of damage done, but enough. We've had windstorms where you can see even this season we had a big windstorm and it blew off all that roofing, so the guys got back up. Again, Chad and the team got up there, replaced it because they have the knowledge on how to do it. But every time it's getting worse and worse, and we fear that boats will be damaged, people will be hurt. So we're getting to that point on the roof structure needing to be addressed, whether it just be, you know, some Band-Aids until new docks can be built or, you know, that kind of thing. But as you already have kind of been working on budgets, you know my budget is tight. This is one of the places where the new wood was where during Duratio last year, that dock split right there, and the boards were literally falling into the water, and the guys had welded this. But every time we have a windstorm, if there's a heavy enough boat, they're breaking some of those fingers and being able to pull them together, weld them, try and hold them together. It's becoming more and more of a need to get solid docks back in. You know, you can see this has a really great example of the finger piers are the really old boards that have started to fail. If you go through and start replacing all the boards, and then you have the metal structure that needs to be replaced, and then, you know, you have aging uprights. You're getting to the point where you're spending so much money just trying to hold them together that money, you know, should maybe be directed into new docks or a better situation. And of course, because the water has been on, you know, they've been under the water for so long that the metal's starting to break. So we'll have what's called a strut, which holds the finger piers so they stay upright together. So when things are moving, they don't move. And those things break. So the team constantly welds, puts those back in. And again, we have a tight budget. So those are things that we are relying on our team to do, which has been really a great use of the funds for the marina. This is our gangway that leads down to 600 to 900. As you can see, it's really rusting. That gangway was just painted at the end of last season, and as you can see, it's already kind of rusted through again. So you can see the landing pad onto the 600 dock there is aging, starting to fail. So again, just trying to give you a picture of what's going on. This one I put back in. You can see that the dock boards are weak, the rub rails falling off, and the metal structure is deteriorating, which we've already discussed. We are getting to the point where, because the metal is getting to be at an age that you're seeing some of these things happen where the dock is cracking and breaking from the pressure of being out of the water. They're not meant to be out of the water. So luckily, we just keep having a team who keeps showing up and keep repairing things like this. But the more it happens, the more liability we start seeing of anybody who could get hurt. Again, this is just badly splintered wood, deteriorated wood. The styrofoams are not a method used in commercial marinas, or like what we have. They use the encapsulated, which keeps the flotation, keeps bugs out of it, keeps a lot of benefits, but they deteriorate. So when you see them floating, you'll see kind of this dome of where the water has eaten away at them over the years of where they've been sitting in the water. So even if you're fixing boards now, you're looking at styrofoam, which you can't really buy anymore. So now we're buying the tubs, which are expensive. 900 again, just rub rail, styrofoam floats, dock boards, the metal structure, everything we've kind of gone over. It's just kind of a common thread throughout the harbor. The FEMA grant, I know we've talked a little bit about it. I tried to put a little bit of a breakdown in here for us so that you guys could see very quickly. The total FEMA grant with mitigation is almost 1.9 million, and then I broke it down. FEMA will pay 75%, but the city still has to put some skin in the game at 25%. If we decided to take the grant, the city's portion would be roughly $475,000. The problem is that with the cost of goods going up so much since 2019, this number could increase until we had quotes and that coming back at us with today's cost, that number could change. And I do want to point that out, as I'm sure all of you know that goods are increasing. We do have until December 31st of 2022 to complete this project. At that point, if we're down the road, Michelle Martin has been really good about trying to help get things extended for us. So if it is something we want to do with the backups in dock production, the last time I talked to Miko Sullivan, they were running about 11 months into production because of the pandemic. A lot of new boaters, a lot of dock owners are buying new docks. So those are things to also be aware of. If the 400 dock is approved for funding and replacement, the annual expected revenue at 100% occupancy would be just under $184,000. We anticipate that if that dock was built, that boaters who are already in the harbor, maybe in an unpowered slip, uncovered slip, would move back to covered, because a lot of our 400 dock boaters stayed in the harbor. They just moved to kind of the non-powered, non-covered slips for now. So it just kind of tried to get a realistic expectation of what the initial increase in revenue would be and how much that would kind of drive to that bottom line as you're moving boaters from one place to another, and then also new boaters. So I took about 50% of that amount to say I would anticipate about $92,000 getting brought down to that total gross income line item, to kind of give you an idea. I hope that makes sense. with the need to replace so many docks, this is a great opportunity to put a brand-new dock in with not having to pay the full cost of what a full installed new dock would cost. So this would be a great reason to do it, is to be able to decommission some of the docks that do need to come out. To decommission a dock is actually not as easy as it sounds. You have to take all the components out of the water. It's not like just bulldozing a building because all the components are under the water. We got a really rough estimate of about $300,000 to decommission the entire marina, just to kind of give you guys some sort of dart to throw at a board, right? So if we got down this road further, we would get a better idea of what these would cost and how we would do it and come up with a real plan. With that also being said, worked with some people in the industry to say, if we replaced the marina docks as they are right now, we would be looking at about $9 million. That would be including that dock covered in FEMA. It would be less, of course, if the FEMA dollars were used. In my opinion, I think there should be a study done, created, and then utilize what they call a berth mix. What is the boat sizes that are today versus when the docks were built in the 60s and 70s? If you go into the marina right now, you can see some of our 20-foot slips. You can only fit one boat because the rest of that double well is too small to put a second boat in, unless you're a jet ski or a Boston Whaler, which is a smaller boat. And so those are kind of some of the things that we want to help you think through with, if the city wants to move forward with the marina, how do we get there? I wanted to just say, you know, there is one thing that we have been able to do. This is kind of a happy moment slide just for a break. The lift well was built in 1959 at a cost of $18,000. Got some information from one of the boaters in the harbor who gave this to me my first couple months in the harbor. The lift well was inspected and repairs have been made to ensure the integrity of the structure. The lift well has also been inspected and repaired. So because we had that kind of in our budget this year, we were able to bring that back up to use. At the end of last season, we were capped at about 17,000 pounds that we could lift, which is not even most of our boats. So we did have some boats that either had to leave the harbor or had to bubble in. So I just wanted to say that is one of the good things we have accomplished. So just gave your brain a little break. And now back to this. The entrance. I got one. The entrance light power pole was knocked over in the flood, like we kind of discussed. This is our sign from the river. I know a lot of you probably aren't boaters, probably haven't been out and from the river coming in. So I wanted to give you a little shot of that, and there's lights above it. And the boaters from the channel can see those lights and then navigate in towards the harbor at night during the season. And the big night is usually the holiday pops. When everybody goes out, they come back, they're trying to navigate in after hours. So that's one of the really big FEMA things that I would really say would be really good for us. Here's my beloved ceiling in my office that when it rains, it just kind of pours in the office. So the approximate replacement is about $33,000. So put that in there. And then these are some shots of the parking lot. As you can see on the left, that is where our travel lift actually runs. So the guys are very careful about how they navigate that. They've thrown gravel there. They've had some little bit of blacktop patch they've put there. But they are kind of running on fumes there to redo the parking lot. We have an estimated cost of about $275,000. Revenue opportunities. We've talked about this in the past with F3 Marina when it was brought on. I will remind you that with every revenue opportunity, there are costs associated with getting a business up and running. And the first one would be kayak rentals, canoe rentals, paddle boards, the equipment. Those are things that, you know, we could look into. How do you rent those items? Would you keep it just to Lake Potter so that you wouldn't have to have any vehicles moving it? Those are all the logistics that would have to be worked through. There are kayakers who are more experienced that could get down to Duckies and get back without a problem. There are others that, you know, would say, oh, you're gonna have to come get me. I didn't realize we went so fast. So that's one of them. You know, one of the other items that we're seeing other harbors starting to rent is pontoon boats, john boats. Grace Marine and LeClaire used to rent pontoon boats, but with the market being so hot for boat sales, they no longer rent them. I will tell you, I have probably 3 to 5 calls a day asking for boat rentals. So it is a legitimate thing that people are looking for. We had a company try to do jet ski rentals. They ran into several hiccups, so they didn't get going. But I will tell you, once they were their stuff got out there, people were calling a lot, just saying, you know, how do we sign up? How do we do this? So I think there's some, you know, viability there. The restaurant, and I'm sorry, there was this really pretty salad on this photo and it disappeared somehow. But it's probably because it's so close to dinner time. But restaurant, whether it's floating, whether it's something we would do with taking over the Coast Guard Auxiliary Building or kind of coming up with those are some things that you can sort of recoup the expenses of putting in what's called a vanilla shell to get water, gas, restrooms, that sort of thing put in. So that is something we could work towards trying to explore to see what the return on investment would be. One of the great things that I think we as Quad Cityans forget is that we are part of the Great River Trail, so biking, and we start right at Sunset Park, right by the fuel dock. So being able to rent bikes might be another revenue-generating idea. Those bikes there are actually bike rentals up at Chestnut Mountain where they rent the bikes. So it's not something that we would have to do alone. You know, there are people out there who are already doing it outside of our local area that could help understand helmets and biking and liability forms and all that good stuff. At one point, we had rented this kind of side section here to Custom Covers over the years. They've moved to a different space, but, you know, we can also start looking towards, do we want to maybe look at renting the garage as a service department for somebody to come in and offer things such as winterization, shrink wrapping, and other boat needs. You know, so those are also additional things that we could kind of look into. I think you guys have probably all looked at this, but the total estimate that we're looking at is almost $16 million. And if you're like me, when I put that number together, it kind of takes your breath away. And that's why, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not something that's just right here, right now, but it's something that would have to be put together as a long-term plan and a long-term agenda on how do we get there, if this is what City Council chooses to do. If you put in the FEMA grant, you're looking at 14.447. So you're a little lower, but still a big chunk of change. So, you know, tonight we're just looking between Public Works and F3 Marina. We're just kind of looking for some direction on how to proceed, and I think I'm going to hand it right back to Mike.
Thanks, Denise. So options moving forward that we presented, which are the normal options that would be considered in any option. We're looking at listing the marina property for sale. That would be the marina shop, the parking lot area, the boat storage area. Obviously, the docks are not part of the actual property itself. So how that would be worked out would be handled in the future. And again, these are, once we get direction from council on how to move forward, we would start the planning and proposal phase. So the other option would be to close the marina. We talked about earlier in the slides, there is costs associated with that, with decommissioning. We're thinking about $300,000 to just close the marina and make it safe. And where we go from there is another question. It's sitting there vacant, which is not a good option either. Or invest in a marina with the repairs that we presented tonight. So we're looking at about $15 million in repairs. While they're all not necessarily needed right at the moment, F3 and Public Works does believe that the dredging has to happen. We were at a point this year that, and obviously we've had record drought conditions this year. So this isn't a normal year, but it seems like every year isn't a normal year anymore. 2019 was flood. 20 was a somewhat decent year besides COVID. And then 21, we've had drought conditions pretty much all year. But again, we've have some areas, I was out in the boat with Alderman Hurt earlier this year, and we're probing areas that are 2.5 feet of water. It's just not sustainable for big boats, that's for sure. So that's what we have tonight. I'm sure everyone has questions, so we would welcome those questions. Alderman Hurt?
First of all, I would like to say, Mike, thanks for all you and your staff has done, and especially, and Denise for what her and her staff has done, dealing with a multitude of issues down at the marina over the past couple of years. And I know I've been down there, and I think a couple other alder persons have been down there as well to visit with Denise, and are aware of a lot of the problems that the marina's facing right now. One thing I was going back on, there was something listed here on the shoreline repairs of 18,000. I don't, maybe I missed something there, but what is that covering, the 18,000?
For the 18,000, it's something that Mike and I thought that we might actually forego. It is a retaining wall that failed during the flood that the guys have kind of shored back up, because we felt like every penny at this moment counts. We would obviously turn that over to you, but I did gloss over that, and I apologize.
What's an estimated listing of a marina these days?
We did discuss that, and the number that we were looking at for our condition was about $1 million.
And is there interest in the industry for marinas now? I know that there's been, last time we talked, there was just the tourism industry of the boating was a kind of a positive. Is that still the case with post-COVID?
So I think, one of the things that F3 Marina continues to see is that there is a market for ownership, that there are people out there looking to invest in riverfront marinas. So some of them are in really bad condition. Matt and I have either experienced them ourselves or seen pictures of them ourselves, and ours is not the worst out there. It is one of those that would have to be more of a you buy as is, and sort of create a plan to come back to getting it into operation. What that looks like would have to be in conjunction with a prospective buyer.
Denise, going back to the page, looks like 28, where it talks about the approved, about the 183,919. Now, I guess based on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, so currently, is this stating that, is this 92 figured into the 183, correct? That's not 92 on top of the 183.
So what I did was, if you fill that dock revenue would be about 183,000, but because we would be bringing people from other parts of the marina in, you would have an increase of slip fees because they're in a $600 slip versus a $2,500 slip. So I just divided that in half to give a better realistic view of what that looks like, because I don't think it's fair, even though that dock itself would generate that revenue, I don't think it's fair to say, oh, if we fill that dock, it's 183,000. I think it's fair to say it would increase our overall revenues by 92,000 is
So-
my expectation.
The other, so as I'm looking up the page prior, there was talk, there was $1,411,000 and some odd extra dollars there for dock repairs. So dock repairs, if those were made as opposed to replace, what are we looking at, like longevity-wise? I mean, I mean, obviously it's more expensive, but obviously we're facing, budget and cost restrictions, all those kind of things. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out as an option, what is the longevity of those repairs before they would need to be repaired again?
As far as what we already have or on a new dock?
Well, because we're talking about, you listed 1,411,624 for dock repairs, as opposed to $9,000 or $9 million for dock replacement. That's obviously a huge difference there. I'm just kind of wondering so you're saying if we go with just dock repairs alone, is that?
So I think, and I don't know
I
which.
guess I'm misunderstanding here.
I'm trying to find it.
It's on page 27?
The 1.4 million is the complete replacement of the 400 dock. That's just one dock.
Okay, so that's,
Is this one we're
see when
looking
it
at?
listed right there under the FEMA grant project, I didn't see where it listed the 400 specifically to that. That's what kind of threw me, I think, so,
Yeah,
okay,
that's for the one dock.
okay.
So it should say dock replacement.
Okay.
And repairs, because there's a few repairs in there for the 300 dock and 600 dock where some of the floats were damaged, and we were asking for those to be repaired. Our Wi-Fi repeater was when the dock slammed into the 300 dock, it busted that repeater, so we are in the process of using some of our marketing money because of COVID to replace that, but that'll go into a FEMA cost that we're hoping we'll be able to get replaced as well. But, so the dock repairs is the dock plus some of these little repairs that are kind of ancillary in comparison.
Well, just to give you a little, I guess my input on a couple of things, I think I think the marina is a necessity for tourism, and it gives us something that we have that on this side of the river that nobody else has, and I think it's instrumental. I think the dock plays, or not the dock, the marina plays a huge part of Rock Island as a tourism area. I also loved your idea about, I love the creativity that you had on some things. I love the idea of the water sports and the kayaking. I think those are all great revenue things. I mean, I know, for instance, we've been to Lake Geneva. We go up there quite a bit, and, you know, just to rent a pontoon for 3 hours is $400. I mean, I know those are huge revenue makers. I see that, I know what they charge. I love the ideas that you're bringing forward. And again, I'm done with my questions. I'll kind of turn this over to anybody else, but I love the ideas that you're presenting here.
Thank you.
I do have one question. What are our annual revenues? I mean, if we're looking at putting almost $15 million into repairs, I mean, what are the annual revenues and how long will it take to see
Sure.
progress?
So, as of right now, we have for 2021 slip revenue, you're at $300 and about $40,000 in slip revenue. It was more than we budgeted for due to COVID. A lot of people are getting out on the water, buying boats, and doing outdoor activities, not only in water sports, but elsewhere as well. Total revenue that we're expecting for the marina this year is just over $600,000, which is higher than we budgeted. And again, that was just the unexpected increase due to COVID. How long that will last, we don't know. So I would kind of go back to the budget we put forth for 2021, which was $532,000, just to kind of give you a fair number. I don't want to say, oh, we're doing this awesome thing when people kind of go back to kids' sports every weekend and chasing their tails. I think you'll see it kind of go level off a little bit more. I hope I'm wrong.
But it has increased over the years, the percentage of rentals, so, you know, you could potentially continue that trend. And if you have, once again, the right facilities and the right, the newness and and whatever, or amenities, you could bring business from other marinas, because maybe their condition is deteriorating, so.
You know, one of the things that we hear a lot is if you had more depth, we would consider Sunset because it's so beautiful. We have the most beautiful harbor probably in a 200-mile radius. I mean, we are just fortunate to have Sunset Park and that whole lake. I mean, I don't know who could disagree with that.
Is that $1 million, roughly $1 million, is that selling the land, or is that or just selling the building? Is that selling the docks? It's
Everything.
land and everything. So we give up land, okay?
Yeah, and and not to be the bearer of bad news, but when we're looking at the revenues, we also have to look at the expenses.
Yes.
And those are for next year, we're looking at a deficit budget,
Yeah.
so.
Well, 9 million to completely replace everything, but it's only worth $1 million.
That's correct.
The way it sits now.
The 9 million is to replace all the docks. It does not touch the building roof, the parking lot.
That's the 14
was-
million.
Or the,
Yes, correct, 14.
14 million.
Does 100% of the expenses related to the marina, is that covered by boat users? Or is it like other aspects of the Parks and Rec Department where 2/3 of it is paid for by user fees and 1/3 is paid for by property tax? How much of the marina's overall budget is covered by users of the marina?
I don't have that number in front of me,
A
Alderman
good
Parker.
question.
So this is our budget for now.
Yeah, it doesn't show as fact.
Well, the goal
Yeah,
is
so-
that it's all covered by user fees, but it's recently that we're running a deficit budget. if you looked at the slides I sent you from previous years, we were managing to do a break even, but we did that by doing less and less maintenance.
Yeah.
I have another question, sorry. Does the marina impose slip increases every year, or when's the last time we've done, or does it stay pretty much the same? Or have we done any comparisons with other marinas to see if we were online with them, or, I mean, I figure some of these people own some pretty expensive boats. I doubt they would care if we had to raise their rates a little bit.
Are you
Everyone cares when rates go up.
Well, a little bit.
So
But you know what, but what I'm saying is, if you're raising them $50 or whatever the case may be, I'm talking about if you're getting brand new just like anything else, if you're getting something newer, I don't think people mind paying a little bit extra, is my point. I want to see, are we in line with other marinas? Have you done some studies on that at all?
So it's a really good question, and last year I came and we did an increase of 1% to follow inflation. This year with inflation being like 5.4%, we did the numbers and it was astronomical to follow that inflation curve. So we are hoping in November, kind of after this, we wanted to kind of get some feedback, get some ideas. Mike and I've already been working through that. It would put us just a bit over some of the harbors, and we would be more expensive for a product that's more worn down.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So if, say, we sold the marina for $1 million, it still would be pretty much a non-functioning marina unless the dredging happened. And then would that be a marina responsibility or city responsibility?
So if we sold it to a private marina company, that would be their responsibility.
Could that be part of a purchase agreement? That there's required dredging?
We could make sure that that is part of the purchase agreement.
If you get it for $1 million, I think that would be a good compromise.
Yeah.
We put out feelers several years ago on a sale, and there was interest, but only if we dredged first.
And was that done pre-COVID?
Oh, yeah, that was done probably 7 or 8, 9, well, maybe even 10 or 12 years ago.
And so what I'm
Boston
hearing
Public.
from F3 Marina is that the market has completely shifted since then. So we should probably put feelers out again. If that's what you're looking for direction, that's my vote.
And the last time we did do dredging was in 2012, and that was some emergency dredging for about $25,000.
Long time.
So if we just did the FEMA replacement that did the dock repairs and all of that, and then did the dredging, but not anything else, would that be such that you think we could attract more boaters? I mean, still the revenue just isn't ever going to make that up, but.
Sure.
I'm
You know,
just
one
curious.
of the things so it all kind of goes hand in hand. If you dredged, I think you would have to do it in a very, think through it with a lot of intelligence. If you're really looking at, ultimately, when you're done with dredging, you're gonna only have 400 dock as kind of your longevity dock. 300 and 100 docks are both getting to the end of their age. They're still one of the docks that I would decommission last because they are in the best shape. 200 dock, if it was floating, would, as of right now, last time we saw it floating was in decent shape as well. So with that dredging, if you said, we're only going to take care of dredging here and we're gonna decommission all the small, docks. There's also something we could do, get permission from the Corps to pull a permit to even move some of the docks. And Mike and I have even kind of discussed, what is there right now? How do you utilize what's there? How do you dredge? We have a direct entrance from downstream into the harbor, which is dumping silt into the 100 and the 200 dock annually. And that silt just keeps getting worse, and the more it settles, the more it collects right there. So, would you maybe consider even just having a company help us kind of identify where those docks, those bigger docks should be, and maybe just take out the little ones? We don't know, but those are things that I think those are good questions, and that's why I'm like, this dollar amount is just kind of as it is right now. But I think putting some energy into understanding what the needs are, the boat sizes, how do you make this work, longevity, I think there are some ways to go about it. I think that you would want to do a return on investment, to be perfectly honest, because like you said, is it something the city really needs to be putting tax dollars at.
Critical timing is the FEMA money. There's not a lot of time because that money will go away.
So in the third ward, I have a citizen advisory council. And there's 8 members on that, and they've been studying the budget, the 2021 budget. And they look at every cost center in the budget based on evaluating, is this a need that the city needs to provide this service, like our water and sewer, or is this a want? Their consensus is the marina is a want, not a need. And when we know we're facing, and not even mentioning like all the debt and all the liabilities we owe, but we need tens of millions, maybe even $100,000 or more to fix our streets, which affects more residents than a marina, they would say, sell the marina. So,
So even with the dredging project, you had mentioned that the entrance, the way it's designed, it just allows silt to come in. Have we looked at trying to re-engineer that, or is that even has that been a thought? Because, I mean, you're gonna spend money, like you said, no matter what, doing the dredging. But I mean, if it's a constant thing, if we can kind of curtail how it's coming in, it could probably reduce that price some.
Yeah, that was done, and Randy could add to that. It was before me, but there was a study done, actually did the environmental portion of that on building a barrier wall out in the channel to push it out back into the river, instead of it coming straight in. But we didn't have enough funds at the time, is what I understand.
Correct. Do you remember the cost of that?
Yeah, it was about $1.5 million. We got a grant for it. We got a federal grant to do that. And I happen to be on the Boaters Advisory Committee and working with Bob Haas on it, so that's only part of the reason I know. But about $1.5 million grant. And then the Corps, of course, they said you had to do a mussel study. And the money to do that study had to come out of that grant money. And by the time we were all done, had about $1 million left over, maybe a little less. Numbers, don't hold me right to the numbers. They came back and it was gonna be north of $1.6 million to do this, do the mussel deal and build this wing dam type deal to redirect it. We didn't have enough money. The city didn't have, even with the grant, to add to it, and so it was scrapped. We still had some money left over. We even asked the federal government we could use the remaining money to buy a dredge, and then that way just dredge it ourselves with our own staff and everything else. And they said, no, the grant would not allow to do that. So we had to return the remaining part of the grant is what had happened. So that was viewed, yes.
Do we have a estimate on how much to build that wall out? Has there been an estimate done on that at all, or no?
We have not a recent study. It was, at the time, it was $1.5 million.
I would say in excess of $2.5 million now, probably. That was quite a while ago we did that.
It's an extensive deal.
But we can use the FEMA money, so say we just decided to do just the dredging right now, and maybe could we use some of that towards the wall, or none of that?
Towards dredging?
We can use it for the dredging, correct?
Cannot.
We cannot, only the docks and,
Dock and electrical, that's it.
FEMA wanted to see a maintenance plan of dredging in the past.
Okay.
To be able to justify the dredging in the grant, and we couldn't provide that because the last time we've done it was 2012.
okay.
I think the marina is an amenity. It's a nice asset for the city of Rock Island to have, whether it's owned by the city of Rock Island or not is neither here nor there, in my opinion. I want to avoid closing the marina. I don't have a boat, so I don't really care, but it's an amenity. I mean, our tax dollars fund Dad's Club baseball through the Parks and Rec Department. I don't have a kid that plays baseball, right? It's part of the gig of being in a city. However, really, I mean, it really boils down to, in my opinion, is there a business case for this, right? Because we're talking about making an enormous amount of a financial investment in this asset, maybe not all at once, but in phases. I'm not going to support the city doing that absent the things that we need to make sure that this can be a return on investment long-term, things like an asset management plan, a dredging plan, right? Because I don't want us to just dump $19 million in this marina and then 20 years later, oh God, we didn't do any maintenance. Here we are again, right? So I guess if you're looking for direction, if you can demonstrate that there is a business case for doing this, that includes the city still owning it, then sure. And if it's over 30 years and there's some sort of financing model, I don't care. But as long as after 30 years, it's paid for itself, then fine, sure. But absent that sort of comprehensive total asset management plan and you know, business case, I don't know if we should be doing this piecemeal, because it all has to come together.
And the only thing I could add to that was, the next step would be whether we move forward with the FEMA grant, and specifically the 400 dock replacement that's included in the grant. We've gone out for requests for qualifications previously. We have submittals for that work. We would need to come back to council with those RFQs and get permission to select a contractor or an engineer to do the design, and then we would have a cost associated with them doing that design. And we would come back to the council for that approval. So we can do that, but again, we know that that cost is gonna be around $500,000 for the FEMA grant, plus the cost to do the design work ahead of that.
I mean, do we think, seeing as how we're operating break even now, if we do all of these investments, we will see a revenue increase, even if it's over 30 years, a revenue increase sufficient to pay for this type of investment?
So I would say that that's where I would recommend getting somebody involved, like F3 Marina, who consults on this, you know, that you get a consultant to do this. You know, I'm a marina manager, so can I tell you all that? Probably not. But, you know, people who are in our organization itself who are paid, you know, out by projects, those are the kind of people you'd want that information from. Because I could throw some stuff at a wall and see what sticks, but,
Right.
you know, that's all I would be really doing.
Anytime you do those, whether they do it, whoever's, there's no doubt, there's always, any business plan, there's assumptions.
Oh, yeah.
And so you do it assumptions, whether you're gonna have increased dock rates, increased number of boats in there, and those are assumptions that you predict out there that may or may not happen, but, so just so people know, there's no guarantee or hard fact to it. There are assumptions out there.
I would like to see, I'm sorry, Judith,
I have one final question.
Go ahead.
And I'm not expecting you to really be able to answer it, whether we do it with the FEMA grant or wherever. Where are we going to get 14 or 15 or almost $16 million for this? That's the bottom line.
And again, I don't have that answer. We've searched for other grants to do the dredging. There's really no other options out there for federal funding.
Exactly.
So even if we repair the FEMA grant, is it gonna make a difference if we don't dredge? I mean, to me, it's kind of like if you repair that dock and you don't dredge, is that gonna hinder slip rentals there and being able to get out?
So I think that if you're not gonna dredge, that you're gonna take the FEMA grant in expectation to sell the marina, because you'd have a brand-new dock, you'd have electrical upgrades, you'd have repairs done to electric, that would make it more turnkey than it is currently.
Okay.
That would be my impression.
Moses, do you have another question?
no, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay.
It was a statement, it wasn't a question.
Well, you can
Oh,
make
no,
a
I wanna hear
statement.
it.
Make it.
Being me, I don't own a boat. So my interest in this would be something that attractive to me. Like someone mentioned, going to a lake, I'm looking to rent. So those type of things will be amenities that you can get other people in who don't don't own boats. You mentioned something about a restaurant. I mean, that's a way you can continue to bring the revenue stream in without having to rely on just those who actually own boats. I know Sunset is a popular place, but I mean, there's nothing there unless you have a boat. So those type of amenities will actually bring in revenue, because then that will bring in the tourists. That's not I don't know, you can go anywhere else where you can rent a jet ski or you can rent a canoe or things like that. But those are things that will actually bring people to that area that can probably help with making up the deficit that it currently has.
What about if you were just to do the dredge, siltation removal, and then rebuild of the 400 docks? We're looking at about 6 million then, correct? A little over 6 million to do those two projects?
Yeah, approximately.
To do those? Now, do you think that would be I mean, I know I guess we can call it piecemealing it because we'd be doing a project a little bit, but do you think that those two improvements would, I guess, would that bring us enough, I guess, more boaters to the area, or do you think that would be an attractive thing to bring more?
You gotta cut it off.
Just trying to think if we didn't do, all of the whole pie, if we just did those two things.
So I think if you're thinking of that, I think I would be misguiding you to say, oh, that would be fine. I think this presentation should really be looked at in the next 10 years. What are we going to do? How are we going to do these items? Next 20 years, how are we going to do these items? What can we piecemeal along the way to take one step forward every year?
Okay, thank you.
Good questions and topics. We got to make sure, timing wise, but the same token is, I want to make sure you guys leave, or the city manager leaves with enough direction. I know we can't vote on anything, but the same token is that you guys, staff has enough direction of what the next steps or thoughts are. Or you're going to, that's all. I just want to make sure you get your answers that you're looking for.
And really, the next step for us is to know how to move forward with the FEMA grant. We have to have the completion done by the end of next year. We have done the RFQs. We need to select a contractor and bring that back to do the design, and at what cost. So that would be a time.
And I know lead time for docs is over a year now, so.
But realistically, that's a decision we shouldn't make until we decide on the dredging. So it's like we're asking,
They're all tied
you're
together.
kind of wanting us
They're all
to,
tied together.
right, so you
that's why
can't
we
decide
brought
on the
everything
grant
to
part
you.
until we decide on, dredging plus, to me, the dredging plus the 400, which you're able to use the FEMA money for, but you've got to, at the minimum, have those two things tied together, correct? Okay.
One of the things that I continue to think about being in, what I do in my spare time with flipping homes is working with somebody who understands the viability of selling a marina in this condition as is versus if you did the FEMA, what would increase that viability to? Would it make sense even if you didn't do the dredge? And that would be somewhere I would push that to an expert to understand those questions more.
I just want to know where we're going to get the money for.
Borrow. It's the only place to go.
Well, I mean, we're already.
I'm not saying we should. I'm
Yeah,
just saying is that.
we're already $140 million in debt.
All right, we need to call it quits. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for your time.
We
Thank you. I do appreciate your guys' time.
need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on it? I assume not. We need to do a roll call.
What about the third item?
We're not gonna, we don't have time. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. We're gonna have to reschedule that. Got about 5 minutes, the next one starts. All right, roll call, please.
Alderman Pulis.
Yes.
Keenan.
Yes.
Robinson.
Aye.
Hertz.
Yes.
Gilbert.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.